Hi, welcome to Comic
And
Talk.
I'm Drew, damn it.
Hi, welcome to Comic
And
Talk.
I'm Drew, son of a bitch!
Maybe you try to start.
Hi, welcome to Comic
And
Talk.
I'm Josh.
Fuck.
Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh. Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I'm Drew.
This is our trade review for Bloodshot Reborn. Reborn.
Reburn, the blood shit reburn. That's kind of perfect, actually. Blood shit reburn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if perfect is the term I'd use to describe that, but it's definitely something. So what we're talking about today is Jeff Lemire and Raul Allen. Has it been Raul Allen the whole time? Raul Allen is like a guest on this one, right?
Raul?
I'm trying to be clever and just look over and say who it is, but
Yeah.
I think it's been Miko something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miko.
Yeah, Miko's been on since the beginning.
Right. So he did the first four, or he did the first four, and Raul did issue number 5 of this. This recently came out in trade just a little while ago, but we've been collecting the single issues, so that's what we have and what we read.
Yeah.
Show them those beautiful beans.
Yeah.
Now, this is a series that you and I have been talking about for a little while. We've been pretty excited to read this, and we're just now getting around to it. So let's start out, and let's just talk about what this is, what the general plot here is, in case they don't know.
So, there was once upon a time, there was a man named Bloodshot, and he had a bunch of nanites in his blood that made him superhuman. He could take a bullet to the dome and come back from it. He was super strong and all that, just super strong. And he ended up hooking up with this girl that figured out a way to get the nanites out of him. So then after that, he's trying to go live a normal life the best he can. But then other Bloodshots start showing up, and he starts to lose his mind a little bit. So pretty great premise right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. For people not familiar with this character, I think the best way to explain this, to give them a point of reference, this is kind of the Weapon X Wolverine story. His memories erased, given false memories, turned into a weapon, except in this he's given the regenerative healing powers that Wolverine has naturally. You know?
Right.
It's not exactly the same, obviously. But the feel of the character is more of a Punisher-esque kind of character, and the tone of the series is a lot more of a Garth Ennis, Jason Aaron, Punisher Max kind of thing. Yeah. So we get this interesting mixture of those two well-known sort of traits into this new character that I think actually kind of surpasses them both.
Yeah, I like him quite a bit. I mean, definitely pulls no punches when it comes to like blood and gore and stuff like that. Glorification of murder, I think, is a big theme, recurring theme. Definitely, at least for one of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing here is the character himself, who's kind of given himself the name Ray.
Yeah.
Is what he goes by, Ray Garrison, is that right?
Mr. Garrison.
Mr. Garrison, yeah. Thanks a lot for that. I
Right.
didn't have that in my head before, but now I will. The interesting thing here is he's a character who does want to repent for all of the things he does or did when he was Bloodshot, when he was this weapon that he didn't really have control over, but he still sees it as his responsibility. But he's somewhere between wanting to do something and wanting to make himself better, to repent, and halfway just wanting to hide and drink his way into an early grave almost.
Yeah. I mean, he's super fucked up. I mean, figuratively and literally. Literally quite often. The booze bottle. It's pretty recurring. He's on... did you catch what he was snorting? It's like some pills that he kept getting. I think they were like Oxycontins or something like that.
Yeah.
Being that a lot of the villains that pop up obviously have the nanites in their blood, and he feels like he can control them. You know, he does feel like it's sort of his duty. You know, since they came from him, they were taken out of him, and now that they found their way into other people, it's kind of his deal.
Mm-hmm. It's also got. I hate to keep making these comparisons, but I think it's apt to do because a lot of people are familiar with these older characters, and
sure.
It's got a lot of the Old Man Logan feel of the original Millar, where, one last job kind of thing, where he's got to go back out and do it again. He's retired and really, I would say, suffering from some pretty severe PTSD.
Oh, definitely.
Is what we're looking at here. This is really a story about a guy who really shouldn't be back out there yet doing what he's doing, but he has no choice. Nobody else can do it,
Right.
kind of thing. And I think it's portrayed pretty tastefully, and it hits pretty hard, I think. It's a pretty heavy, weighty series and story. This isn't 90s. Bloodshot, even the name, when you see the name, you see the character. To me, at least, I think cheesy 90s, gratuitous violence, guns and guts and gore.
Which, given the original Valiant, did come out in the 90s, I believe. Maybe it was the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't read the first Bloodshot series, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it was. Just, a bunch of guns and gore and him going out on missions, and that's about it.
Right. But this is definitely not that. Although it does have the guns and gore, and it has the gritty, let me put this down so I can, gritty violence to it. It's not really reveling in it, or if it is, it's almost ironically.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of ironic, let's talk about some of the supporting characters. There are two big ones. We get a third one towards the end that we're sort of promised a prominent role in the future, but such is not the case right now. So first, we have a hallucination of his woman that took the nanites out of his blood. And the other one is Bloodsquirt. How would you describe Bloodsquirt?
Bloodsquirt is the id of the character. He's Pip-Boy for any video game players. It is kind of the feel and the style of this character. Very cartoony, but a very violent underpinning. And a very clearly violent, sociopathic sort of character. It's intentionally a cartoon, silly character that's extremely violent and ridiculous in the same way that he looks cartoony. He's cartoonishly
violent. And sociopathic. Yeah, it also kind of reminds me of Facebones from Metalocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
The little mascot thing that would have people fight to the death and such. And I think it works really well for this for two reasons. One, as far as the story goes and just the portrayal of everything, it's pretty dark and real and grounded. And as much as like a Capes book could be, and like some real shit. And then just to have this absolute off the wall, like the Daffy Duck of mass murder just bouncing around and being the devil on his shoulder is fantastic. And the other way that I think it really works is the art in this is pretty consistently
grounded.
Yeah, it's realistic. Lots of shadows and stuff. Almost reminds me of like Batman. That may be even like underselling it a little bit though. Mm-hmm. But definitely shadowy and crosshatchy and stuff. And then again, to have this very simply drawn character just pop up every once in a while. I mean, he pops out in every panel that he's in and just looks absurd. You can see this one right here. We see, adults having an adult conversation, and then he's just kind of peeking around in the back, looking completely out of place and absurd.
Right.
Which is
and it is an insertion of absurdism into the comic. Very clearly and very predominantly. When he's on a page, your eye's almost immediately drawn to him, which also serves the purpose of giving you kind of the same reaction that Ray or Bloodshot himself is going to have to this character. Like, because he's so different and so out of place on the page, it makes him feel as different and out of place as he would be to Ray himself as a character. So it makes it easier to relate to the character and his hallucinations in that way. And
also, I think he is a character, Bloodshot that is, has a bit of the Snake Plissken Wolverine kind of thing going on, where he's so dark and in his own head, and I don't want to say necessarily introverted, but a very stoic character, that really a lot of what you learn about him has to be from like a secondary source or somebody talking to him. Like, he's not going to come out and give this big exposition about himself, because he's not that type of guy. So to have these two characters, like one, like the one human being that he ever trusted and really had feelings for, and then the other, again, Daffy Duck of mass murder, definitely works to bring out a lot of dialogue and stuff that would be hard to approach otherwise. So it's a very interesting tool, I would say, by Lemire. I don't know if Blood Squirt appeared in the last series or not.
I don't know either. Probably. I'm assuming he must have. Surely. It seems too off the wall to not be a legacy concept.
It is Jeff Lemire. I mean,
that's true.
He can do whatever he wants.
I think also this series has a lot of internal narrative as well.
Yes.
There's without the Blood Squirt character and his old girlfriend, whose name escapes me. Is it Amy?
I think it's something like that.
It's something of that nature. Without those two characters, there would be very little explanatory power, and you would wear tired of all of the narrative, of him sort of in his head telling you the story, which, by the way, is very in your face about the fact that he's telling you a story as well, which I always really like. They don't always do this in comics. A lot of times there's a gray area of, is this character in their own head, or are they supposed to be talking to me? But in this, it's very clear that he's telling us a story, to the degree that many times he even will say, I'll tell you more about this later. Or,
yeah, there's a bit of that fourth wall.
I'm going to get to this, just give me time. I have other things to explain to you, or there's other things you need to see first. It's breaking the fourth wall a little bit, where he is talking to you, the reader, very directly, which is a great way to do this specific series. It doesn't always work, but it works well with this one.
And they didn't cheapen it by having, the first page be him in like some police questioning holding cell.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, he's actually talking to, who was ever asking about this. It's like, no, he's telling you a story.
Right.
They don't need any sort of plot device to justify it. It's just, this is the way it's happening, which is great.
Right, because anytime we get that, we know that it's just a plot device to tell us anyway.
Right, yeah.
So I think Lemire is smart enough here to just say, well, screw the plot device. We all see straight through it. We've seen it 100 million times. I'm hoping that, 3 or 4 issues down the line here, we're not going to, pull back and guess what? He's been talking to an investigator the whole time. It's possible, but at that point, I feel like it'll still be okay, because we've gone that far where we feel like he's talking to us without that intermediary in there.
Sure.
It definitely makes it feel more personal. It makes it feel like a war journal, which again makes me feel that Punisher connection, because we get a lot of that with War Journal and Warzone. We get all these old Punishers where we had that same feel, and that was also popular at the time with Punisher, with the original Bloodshot around the same time. Punisher was pretty big. And it had that tone, so I wonder if we had that tone in the original Bloodshot as well, and if he's just aping that same thing here.
Probably. Every character, it seems, is a response to another character.
Right.
I mean, even if you go all the way back to when DC was about it, like Batman in a lot of ways was a response to Superman. They were responding to their own things, you know, and then Marvel comes along and just steals fucking everything. But anyway. So, yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the artwork, because it is pretty great. It's quite different in the 5th issue. Right.
The 5th issue, we get a guest artist, which was a great call because of where we go in the 5th issue, which we won't. I don't think we should necessarily talk too much about why we have the guest artist or why it's a great idea. Let's focus on the first 4.
Sure.
And we will say that the 5th issue gets very avant-garde.
It's different.
It's very different, yeah. These first 4 issues, though, are just, I mean, the art is just so sort of, I don't know, what is sometimes grotesque would almost be a way to put it. And then other times it's just very, it's just a lot of ink work, a lot of black, a lot of, like you said, hatching. Really going for a thick, maybe preacher vibe, like that old, heavy Garth Ennis kind of feel to things. Very cool look to it, especially again when we have this blood squirt character throughout that sits on top of the page and really pulls things in two different directions.
And a note on that, so we know that Lemire is a bit of an artist himself. Well, not a bit. I mean, he's done an entire series before.
Right.
But in the back of all of these issues, or at least a lot of them, we can see a lot of his artistic direction. And man, he really lays out exactly what he wants from the artist. Because it's always kind of a question of how much of this is the writer and how much of it is the artist. And not to discredit the artist at all, because they did an amazing job. But as far as panel layout and how he wanted things to look, Lemire had a vision. And it's a pretty cool vision. Yeah,
this is a really cool collaborative effort because, like you say, you can see they show some of his notes. Like we get some of his notes in here about how to lay out certain pages. Page 1, I want 4 panels. Top panel's black. Second panel looks like this.
He even made a note about how he wanted really old school paneling in this,
right,
which I think is very appropriate for the title.
Right, and we do have times where the old school paneling falls to the wayside for specific things to give some contrast, and that seems very deliberate as well. The paneling work and the layout is top notch here. It's there's a lot of different styles of layout and paneling that we see throughout. It's like you said, a lot of times it's very traditional, but not always.
Yeah.
And it seems like they really pick their battles on where to do interesting or weird layouts to really push the story more, to illustrate things that you couldn't illustrate with a traditional layout.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of thought was put into what is standard in comic book and what is going to serve this and what is not. And I think it's something that they must be constantly sort of asking themselves and reassessing.
Well, I think that's just about going to wrap it up on this for us. Overall, this is a buy. This is a go, right?
Oh, yeah, I like it.
High quality series. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I like this enough that it's got me more interested in other Valiant titles now. I'd like to maybe go back and check out a few more trades as they come out. Maybe we'll hit up some more trades with Valiant here in the next few months. But to do that, we need viewers to tell us which ones to read.
Yeah, tell us what to do. Come on.
Yeah, help us out here. Which one should we go after next? Should we do Exo Manowar? I see that there's a lot of references to that in here. It sounds like big, crazy space battles with armor suits and stuff. It could be interesting. I've heard Armor and Armstrong is really good. So let us know what you think we should do. We'll probably hit some of those the next few months, you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Other than that, as always, like and subscribe, and Facebook and Twitter,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. And check back with us on Wednesdays, because we always do our weekly pull list review. And either on Mondays or Fridays, we always drop an extra episode where we do a trade or an old series, something out of the bargain bin. We always try to mix it up and give you something different. So check back for that as well. Other than that, get the hell out of here and go watch some other videos. Bye.
Go home.